Okay, so this is my catchy title for the workshop, because sometimes it is, you know, it doesn't have an exact science to it. So you never know when you send that application away whether it's going to come back. Yes, you got the grant, or no, you did not, and you're never going to know why to get that grant. So I kind of feel like this suits the purpose. I'm lucky. And this is just our course outline. This is what we're going to be talking and learning about today, is all aspects of grant applications, how to develop a budget, good practices, how to create a great application, get innovative and impressive. And then I had to throw in a couple of jokes just because, you know. I like the one on the bottom that says we fund only those proposals we can understand. Okay, and this is one of my things I enjoy, is the catchy title. A lot of people struggle with it, and I can't say I haven't struggled with it at times. But usually I can figure it out and make it work. But your catchy title should make an impact. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It shouldn't be long and lengthy. It should be short and concise. And you want it to catch their attention. It can rhyme. It can be a little bit fun. And the thesaurus, of course, is your friend. So you can just leave that up there for a little bit. And this also can be a stumbling block. There's going to be a few stumbling blocks that we all have along the way, and what might be my stumbling blocks might not be yours. So you wanna develop a title that has a big impact and grab their attention. It should speak to the core of the project, and you ultimately want them to remember it. Where you want them to think, well, where was that one? And that mountain of 200 or however many applications they get, where was that one? Because they might remember that catchy title. Some of my faves were one we applied it around the fall, late fall, and it was called Ho Ho Magic. And I was trying to think, well, it was a Christmas program for shut-ins and anybody that was home alone. It didn't really have an age-specific program, but we wanted to bring them, and that was also through the beginnings of COVID. So we wanted to bring them a little porch visit and a little something to cheer them up for the day. So it was never really about the what was in the little basket or the bag, but it was all about that porch, that all important porch visit. Some of the other ones I've had were, my recent one with PLSB was get connected to a brighter future, as we were applying for computers and digital resources. We had a lighting grant, and that one was energize, improve, and save. So sometimes you don't need it to be catchy, but it needs to speak to what you're applying the grant for as well. The energize, improve, and save was, I guess, more practical. It was a government application, so I figured, you know, catchy might be wasted on them. And then the other one that I really enjoyed and had fun, a couple more actually, was Bring Our Families Back. So that was directly after COVID. And we got an ATV grant for books and resources for right from preschool through to junior. So grade 6. And then last year we applied for one for our back, at our library. We've got like a park, little park right behind us. And we want to do some developing there. Found some old blueprints, was our 75th anniversary at the same time. And they had the park developed back there a lot more than what it is at the present time. So I applied for a couple of grants, and so friendly places, friendly place, amazing space. Now I'm going to put you guys to work already. So I'm going to hand out, if you guys just want to do 2 and 2. So this is, you're going to apply for this type of a grant I've given you. So think about what that catchy title might look like. And we'll give you, go with what comes into your head. Sometimes the first thing that pops in your head is the one you got to go with. Think about what you're applying for, because it should speak to that a little bit. It should reflect a certain amount of what you're applying for. Okay, so a couple other things I just wanted to say is your title needs to clearly reflect the focus of your proposal. And use plain language, keep it short, active verbs, work, and leave out unnecessary words. You got to remember when they're looking at these proposals that they're probably looking at a pile of 200 or even more, and you want yours to be in the top, however many, 10 or 20 or whatever. So you want to stand out a bit. Make sure it stands out, and the best way to do that is right at the very beginning. Okay, let's see who's got, come up with what. Oh, Carrie.
Sure.
Take it away.
So we are going to be applying for a grant for children's programs and books. And we came up with Jump into Reading and Building Bright Futures.
Right.
So we were tasked with, we need new shelving and display area. We came up with a top shelf upgrade.
Ooh,
That is
very good. That is very good.
You talk about active verbs. Is that supposed to be, what's that supposed to be?
I guess it catches your attention, maybe. You know, you need an attention grabber, right? Something that's really going to stand out and catch their attention. Like when I was looking, the Ho-Ho Magic was one probably that came to me the quickest. And I was just thinking Christmas. And I thought, well, what's the big thing about Christmas? Well, you know, Santa Claus, Ho-Ho. What else? What's good about Christmas? And the magic came in there, and you know, that was an amazing one. But it doesn't always happen, and sometimes you struggle. So don't hesitate to pull in some extra help, your friends, your board, anybody that you can run it by, and sometimes you'll have 4, and sometimes I've completed the whole grant application and gone back because I couldn't find one that I could pick, right? So I waited till the end, and then one after that. Awesome. Okay. So another one is
one job to do.
where to apply. There are lots of grants out there. Government grants are usually into 2 types, federal and provincial. I will give the Alberta government credit. Theirs are typically more simple and less wordy. I mean, they're still going to ask you the same questions that we're going to go through here, but the federal government just takes it all to the next level. At some points, you even think to yourself, well, gosh, is this really worth my time? Because, you know, you're putting your head against the wall here, banging your head on the wall. And look at what's available right in your own community. Look to the banks. I've had great success in town here with ATV. And I think this year I'm applying for my 4th grant from them. And sometimes co-op, like I've applied to the co-op or any of the grocery stores, I think all have their own. UFA is another one that you might find in rural towns. The other one that I've applied for and got for 8 years now is Enbridge. And I'm going to go into that one a little bit later because that one has some special circumstances around that one. But that was a summer reading program grant. They gave us $2,000 every year for 8 years.
Nice.
So if you can get a consistent one, that is just amazing, right? To have them continue to do that. Anybody have any questions or any ideas where they applied locally? There is a lot of federal ones out there, and there's quite a few provincial ones. So you just need to search online for those. And then I said, you know, look at what's right in your local community. You can talk right to them and go right to the source and talk to them about what your plan is. And they're working in this community, so they're quite often, you know, they have a good say in how that outcome. They have a good say on the outcome, so quite often works really well. And then word of mouth. Ask around with your other colleagues or other community members that have applied for some grants and find out what they were applying for. Some of them are very specific though, like for a lift. Or what are some of the other ones? Some of them are youth. They want to do something with youth. Some of them are very specific. And some of them are actually operating grants or building maintenance, repairs, that kind of thing. Yes.
So I'm like very new to my role. I started in November. And I'm very much trying to get my feet wet with this. And the board has decided that we need a sponsorship committee. And so we're writing a sponsorship policy right now. And we're talking about approaching local businesses for sponsorship.
Right.
Do you think that applying for grants versus sponsorship, like if one would be more successful than the other?
I've done a little bit of both. We have written letters to, you know, all of the local businesses and nonprofit organizations as well. They do get hit up by other organizations as well in your community. So I guess it's just feeling that out and see how that, you know, you see if that's would be better. And it also, I think, depends on the amount of money that you're looking for. Like, are you looking for $3,000 or are you looking for 20?
I mean, I want all of it.
I would say like we have 2 different Lions clubs in South Point, but one can only give money to youth
Right.
stuff, right? So, you know your base too of what you're, and then ask for it accordingly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
What do you make of the grant station database or that database thing from subscribers?
I was
Here,
in there
from
looking
where?
around. I was in there looking around.
Okay.
And there, you got to have the time to look with that. I find it's very time consuming. And there's a lot that aren't available to us because a lot of them are Manitoba or Saskatchewan or some other province. So you're looking through a whole bunch, you know, to find some from Alberta. I don't know. I think it could be a little bit better organized. If they would organize it by province, would certainly help people look, that's for sure. I found it really time consuming.
So when you say look for federal or provincial grants, you're thinking reverse engineering. So if you're looking for inclusivity and diversity grant, you would do that search string as opposed to Scotiabank grants.
Yes, but also I would look at typically places like Scotiabank and ATB and Co-op and UFA. They want something that's really community minded. They're looking to help. They wanna boast that they're helping, they're supporting their own community, they're supporting their rural community. So it depends what you're asking for, I guess, with some of them. Know your clients, I guess, that you're asking. Do a little bit of research, go online and find out what their goals and objectives are. And, let that reflect a little in your grant. So, but federal and provincial grants do have their place for sure. I would say the provincial one is more, like I was saying, it's more, I find it more maintenance or building or operating, that kind of thing. Not necessarily project specific, like for programming or books. I would choose the ATBs and the Scotiabanks and the UFAs for that type of a program. But some of them are also very specific. Like right now, some of them are choosing the outside spaces, a park or community garden, anything outside is some of them for sure. Sure.
I think, sorry, Daphne, if I
Yeah.
just might say, if you're thinking of doing something really specific, like a kind of pride program for your library, you could probably go to the specific federal or provincial department, and they might or probably have a grant for that kind of thing. Like, I think it depends. You could reverse engineer. I don't know if that's reverse engineering anymore, but you could, you know, I guess look at it from that way. If you have something really specific in mind, look at that specific department instead of just searching through the list. But yeah, that's not helpful. Like if you're looking for any kind of money.
The best way I've found with the provincial and just finding some new ones that might be out there is just doing Google. You know, put in a few specifics into Google, put Alberta or federal government down and Google what you're looking for and just see what pops up. Because sometimes there is some out there that that you might miss, right? Yeah. And sometimes they pop up into my email as well, because I think the federal government tends to share. Always applied for the summer reading program, Canada Works program, and then took some surveys after that. So then there was a government grant that popped into my email and know that it was available. So that happens with the government as well. Do I meet the requirements? This is your first very important step because there's no sense in doing the work if you don't really fit into what they're wanting or what their requirements are. So your first step is printing that application deadline or guideline, sorry. And be aware, make sure you check the funding amount, because I've had some applications and I've looked at the one grant and I thought, oh, this sounds so good. But then I find out it starts at $100,000 or it starts even at $75,000 or $50,000. And what we're looking for is maybe 10, or 20. So check the funding amount before you do all the work. Print that application guideline and make sure you meet their criteria. And that pretty much covers your eligibility. Like, they'll give you what they want, what they're looking for, who can apply, all those type of things. And then there's going to be some stumbling blocks along the way, and that happens whatever you do whenever you're doing any kind of a community event. Even, we know there's all stumbling blocks in community events. And then there is also stumbling blocks when you're doing grant applications, for sure. And sometimes you just have to abandon that one that you thought sounded so great and move on, because you just don't meet their criteria. The other thing is, make sure you know the deadlines that are associated with that grant application. There'll be obviously an application deadline, but if you get the grant, you have to be ready for the other deadlines that follow it. You need to have all your ducks in a row when you apply, so that if you get a positive result, then you don't have those stumbling blocks of like panic, because now I have to get 3 different quotes on, something fairly large, and you don't even know, you don't maybe even have the contractors listed yet, and that deadline is going to be looming. So, any questions around that one? No? Cool. Application steps. Well, we've read through the guidelines part of this. I like to rough draft the questions so that when I get on the computer, because sometimes, especially with the federal government, it's timed. You have 20 minutes to complete your application, or it's gone. It does happen. They're getting better. I will say the federal government is getting a bit better, but it is timed. So make sure you know that time. And if you're being timed, make sure, again, you have all of your, everything's ready when you apply. And then the project description, I usually make sure that I have that one for sure researched and done as well. You need to be thorough with the project description. They want to know everything there is to know about what this project is going to look like. And you need to do your research on that one too, and make sure you've got everything figured out from all angles in that project description. Give them a good solid description of what it's going to look like, how it's going to take place, who's going to man it, that kind of thing, who's in charge. The next one, we'll get into these in a little bit more detail as well. Impact statement. That's another one of my favorites. The impact statement should be fairly concise. You want it to reflect the project, but you also want it to make an impact. This is your chance to grab them and say you're choosing my application. These are the 2 biggies I figured between the catchy title and the impact statement. Not everybody asks for an impact statement, but most do. So you want to know who it impacts. You want to tell them who it's going to impact. Let them know what you do. Let them know you're not just books. This project would, one of my favorites that I use is this project would directly affect and impact the town county, surrounding communities, and our Indigenous neighbors. So that doesn't need to say, I can have a couple of sentences in there. Don't feel that you can't have at least 2 sentences, but you don't want to make it a whole paragraph, right? You're trying to keep it concise a little bit, but you still want to let them know the impact it's going to have. Yes.
I was looking at a couple of grant applications and they request a specific number of people that the program is going to like impact. How do you come up with that number?
Well, actually, the town of Elk Point, I would get their population, their current population. The county of St. Paul, I would do the same for our area here that surrounds Elk Point. And you can just get that by calling your county office or your town office.
So like if I'm applying for a youth-led program or whatever, and it's like, how many youth is this going to impact? I was just like, the youth population.
Well, you can look at how many, then you can go to the schools and say how many are in this school from this grade level.
Okay.
And usually you can get that number from the schools. Right.
Thank you.
Now, when you're looking at surrounding areas, I know we pull from surrounding areas here. So Clondonald doesn't have a library, Dewberry doesn't have a library, Heinsberg doesn't have a library. And so we pull from those areas here. And typically we also get customers. So if you get customers from those areas, then that is a good enough reason for you to count them under your impact statement. You're getting customers from there, then they count. They count. And you can even let them know that somewhere in your application too, if you want to. If you think it's going to be fairly competitive, it wouldn't hurt to let them know. How
You
you're
often
using-
have to reference exact numbers like what she's talking about. I've never had to.
I have.
Yeah.
I have had to use exact numbers.
Okay.
Not often, but there's been at least one I can recall. I can't tell you which grant application that was, but I do remember using specific numbers because I did call the county and I did call the town.
I was reading that application, I would assume they meant like your targets of what you expect to reach, not the population demographics, like.
Yeah, it just depends, I think, on how they've got it worded.
I feel
How
like
they've got it worded. So make sure you're reading the questions correctly too.
it's like for us, we don't have a lot of team come into our library because we have nothing for them to do if they don't want to read. We literally, like, there's nothing. And so I really want to develop a teen area, like get some gaming consoles, stuff like that. And I think it was either Walmart or TV, and they asked me for like a specific number. And I was like, is this potential? Is this how many people I actually have coming in right now? Because that's not going to be very impressive. You're like, this will impact the 6 teens that come here once a month for Tuesdays.
And you know what's really effective in other ways for you to do that? When I go to the county and I want money from the county, it's effective for me to know they want to know who my customers are and where I'm drawing from. So it's really effective to actually know those numbers for them. And, you know, they're appreciative of that. And, you know, they usually want to know. Absolutely. And then the other thing when you're filling out your application form, just be careful. The federal government is famous for this one. They may have a word count on every single question on maybe just a couple. but they have a word count they may have a word count on there, so be aware of that and make sure you count those words. I like the application where it counts for you, but they all don't do that. You guys have any questions so far? We'll go into the budget. The budget has another, I'll go into the, yeah, another slide. So most of these all do. This is kind of just like a overall look. All right, this is the big one. Statement of need. Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing more to discuss. Send me your money.
It's in well with your project. Right? Give me your money.
Yeah. This is one that I struggle with. And this is the one that is the hardest, I think, for me to fill out. Because I think we all basically struggle with selling ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And this one is a tough one. And you need to be concise and persuasive. Who is the grant? Who is the grant important to? Who is the project important to in your community? And that will help you fill out that statement of need. You know, who's it going to directly impact? Are you helping people? Say your grant request for a community garden. You know, sometimes I'm even just gone for a walk and thought about the community as a whole, like who's going to impact this? How's it going to help our community? And then you need to have a proposed impact as well. So we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to do another little breakout. And I'm going to give you a proposal for a grant request. And I want you guys to work on the statement of need. So your grant request is for a community garden. How are you going to write that statement of need?
I shall pause the recording now.
Okay.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Okay.
Okay, well, there.
It's okay, they're gonna just steal it anyway.
So what we came up with, we wrote, in an effort to create an intergenerational meeting space for families and seniors, our library would like to develop a community garden. Many of our library patrons are low income and lack space for personal gardens. By creating this community garden, we welcome all in the community to participate in a sustainable program that encourages learning from seed to sprout.
Perfect. Very good. Not too long, not too short. That's good. That's about what you want. You gotta explain, but you don't want it to go on or
You don't
get
want to overwhelm,
repetitive,
yeah.
right? Or overwhelm.
All right, let's hear it.
Our strategy was to just answer the why, who, what, and we'll measure it. We didn't put it into sentences per se, but Health Point needs a community gathering space that provides opportunities for nutrition education, learning plant identities, and offering a community space. By creating a new community garden, we will offer intergenerational outdoor spaces, those with food insecurity. Impacts include addressing accessibility, subsidizing food costs, and creating a new space. Measure these impacts with program and then stats, usage plots, questions survey.
Very good.
Very good.
Strategic mumbling.
So would it be so feasible, like, could you mesh some of those things that, like, their answer and our answer, because he had the measurables where we didn't really per se, like, would it make sense to try and
They
gather all of that
may-
information?
They may ask you for the measurables in a separate question.
Mhm.
That's why it is important to know, you know, or you realize it and you go, oh, well, I'm just gonna move that there. And
Gotcha.
then I might have to come up with another sentence for here, right?
Okay,
Because they might ask, they probably will ask you how you're gonna measure that. And,
Is it a mistake to intentionally and so that you don't get caught when you have to amend it later? So like if the realities of the project kick in 6 months from now, it's like adapt. But I didn't say specifically how I'm gonna do it here. Just said I'm going to address this.
no, that it's perfect to do that. They're not gonna hold you to that, tooth and nail. What they're gonna hold you to is your budget.
right.
Where
Yeah.
you spent that money, where you spent that money. That's what they're gonna that's what they're gonna hold you to. So it's fine in this instance, if you said something in here that just didn't make sense when it actually came down to it, or you just couldn't get it to work. They're not gonna hold you to one sentence in your application form, they could care less. But they are gonna hold you to that budget. And your end of report, like reporting. Some of the, well, I'll get into that into the budget section, but we'll go into that in more detail. Budget section. Yep, we can
Yeah.
move on.
Okay, so let's take.
You
a
guys
break.
have any questions then about statement of need? It makes you think a little bit more,
Yeah.
for sure. I find it does me, but
And I think if you can focus it in and then just do your points to the why and the who, instead of
Mhm.
getting off on the whole tangent of, oh, and this is what the project.
yeah, you just gotta narrow it down and focus in on the one that's really important.
So I applied for that provincial one-time grant that was due in February. And I found that when I was answering the question, maybe I was reading them wrong, but they felt very overlapping to me. And so I felt like I was repeating myself the whole time. And I'm like, how can I creatively wordsmith this to not look exactly the same as my last answer?
Yes,
Like, does that happen a lot?
it does happen a lot.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it does happen a lot, and the more you do them, the more you'll become really effective at changing that wording. And I think it's important that you do change it somewhat, because you don't want to be totally repetitive, because they're gonna look at that and go, oh yeah, well, she just said that up
They
there.
didn't put
So
much effort.
yeah, it's about the effort, right? So you want to change that as best you can. Try and pick something else out of it that you could have said. Maybe you didn't say much about community impact, and then on the second one, you can focus more on that. But they will try and catch you up, absolutely. And I think what they're looking for is the people that put in the effort and the time to get creative and answer that one a little bit differently.
We still have better things. Better than
I know, I hate those questions. Oh, didn't I just answer that? Okay, so goals and objectives. So this is where you can get a little more wordy with your grant, and you can describe the results and the outcomes. And it's got to be attainable, realistic, and measurable. Be sure the project fits the goals of your library. So dig out this little guy and make sure that it fits in your 5-year plan under your goals and objectives. Vision statement, your mission statement is sometimes in here, guiding principles. Try and tie it something in there. And then you can also mention that in your application as per our goals. Or our 5-year plan always looks good too. State your mission, who you should serve, and your achievements, especially if they tie in with the project. Like I said, let them know that you're more than just books. The people rely on you for, the community relies on us for such and such. And if you've got any surveys, customer reviews, chats, again, your 5-year plan to back that up, then that's what you want to do. And tell exactly what the problem or the need is in your community and how you're going to address that. Make sure it's measurable. How much, how many, it states what the extent the problem or need will be solved. And I think I said before, include a time frame. So under that also, yeah, method and activities. Describe your project activities in detail, indicating how your objectives will be accomplished. So then you're getting one step further into final details. How you measure, again, how you will measure the success. So whether it's with surveys, you know, if you're counting numbers, if it's a program that's involved in there somewhere, like if you were teaching like digital literacy or resume building, job skills, then you could count those numbers, right? And make sure you pass those along. Make a compelling case, provide detailed information, and then make sure you have specific goals. And anticipate some outcomes in your community. So under project description, no, but this falls under method and activities. So under project description, explain the project clearly in detail. That's very important. They want to see detail. They want to see detail. And make sure your grant fits your project, your grant application fits. This is such an important step to get right and take the time to read it thoroughly. If they offer you a webinar on the grant application, make sure you take it. It definitely was a bonus when I did my last federal government one. Oh my gosh, I would have probably mucked that up, I'm sure. But I took the webinar and they were very good. Because they make it so difficult. So you had to figure out, there was like 4 different streams. And they base it on 3 or 4 different things like population and area and project and how much money you're asking for. So then you've got to answer all those questions and then you get slotted over here. So if I wouldn't have took the webinar, I probably would have had to do that little thing that where they automatically slotted you according to your answers.
Yeah.
But if I wouldn't have taken that webinar, I'd probably been doing that little survey about 4 or 5 times. But anyways. Yeah. Okay, objectives, key results is another one. Make sure you focus on the big key ones. Starting with your value and your target. Find tasks, create a schedule. Anybody got any questions on that one? Okay. So next. Attachments. So sometimes they'll require you to upload your audited financial statement. Okay. And I'll get into that a little bit more with the budget, but they will ask you to upload certain things, so we'll make sure you're prepared for that. Especially if you're under a timeline.
Yeah.
You don't have time to go and, dig that out of the filing cabinet. Letters of support. Actually, I have a few here to share with you guys. They are important too, because these are letters that you're going to ask for letters of support from your community. So if there's a place where they ask for these, make sure you do it. These, I'm sure, have helped me. As you will read a few, I'll pass them around and you guys can read them.
Do you pre-write them for anyone?
No, I've given them ideas as to kind of what would go in there, but I don't pre-write them. No. And I have got one here from the elementary school. We work with them. I've got one from the Heritage Lodge because we have gone up there and provided games and delivered books during COVID, and they've just kept going. We have one gentleman that doesn't connect to Zoom, so he comes to the library for Zoom. So I've got a letter from them. I have one from Sandy Bishop, who is our CALP. So CALP is, I don't know if you guys all know what that one is. I should know exactly what. She's a CALP coordinator, and it's connecting people with knowledge, skills, and opportunities. So she does English as a second language. She helps them with forms. She does even just talking English so they get confident with them. And then she also does digital literacy as well. So she'll do the basic computer, basic iPad, that kind of thing. So it's been a real bonus to have them in our building for sure. Plus they pay rent. And then I have an older one here from when Early Childhood Development Council was still in Elk Point. And I was asking for money from ATD for the books, stuff for the kids. That was a really good one to have from them. So ask the ones that can really help you out too. But I'll pass them around. You can read them. They're really important. I know some will only want one. Some will take up to 4. You can upload sometimes up to 4 letters of support. Finding the ones that have used your building or you partner with in your building, those are really good people to approach right off the bat. I have asked the town and the county as well for letters of support. I think the community ones actually have a bigger impact. So that's something you got to do in advance too. So, right. So You gotta give people time to get them out to you.
Do you ever include them even if the grant doesn't ask for them?
Absolutely, yeah. If I'm mailing it in or if there's a way for me to attach it somehow, sure. Yeah, I don't see why not.
Addendum on the budget.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Most of the grants will ask if there's letters of support to upload. There's an upload thing there for you. Because they want your financials too, right? Yeah. Most organizations are quite willing to write a letter from you and choose anyone who partners on programs or services. And I use anywhere from 2 to 4, depending. And especially if you kind of find somebody that's project specific. You know, like when I was asking ATV for the books, then letter of support from the elementary school was, you know, the right place to go.
Right.
You know,
Once you get them to write you a letter of support, are they no stakeholders that you like report to on the outcomes of a thing? Or is it just letter support and then done?
I've had some that are letters of support and kind of done, but if I see them in the library, I kind of keep them how it's going, and or they might ask how it's going, and I definitely make sure I give them a little bit of a blurb. We also put it in paper, so I mean they're quite able to read the paper. We also put it on our website and on our Facebook or Instagram or whatever. So they have a fairly big impact, I would say, on the outcome as well. Your letters of support. That proves community buy-in, right? For your project. That's just another proof that you've got the community behind you. Okay, now if there's no other questions, does anybody have any questions about the letters of support? I haven't had anybody refuse me yet to write one. So I just tell them what it's for, and you could send them a thank you card afterwards. I usually just stop in and see them.
Do you ask them to use their letter every time you apply for a grant that you would be using the letter for, or do you just ask for a letter and then
Well, there
apply it
is a-
as needed?
If they dated that letter, I usually say, you know, is it okay if I use this for another grant as well? I'm applying possibly for another one this year. And then I might use that letter in early the following year. But then you either have to get them to either change the date for you or agree to let you change the date. And then you can still use it. And some of them appreciate that because then they don't have to rewrite it. Unless you're approaching a community organization and that president or executive has changed, then you might have to ask for a whole new letter. Budget. So this is a big one. It is a detailed financial plan of your project. They're going to want some detail here. So if you're looking at something that requires you to get a quote, then you might have to actually either indicate that this is coming right from a quote or upload that or attach it or whatever. Most of them, I think, want to know, like, as long as you inform them that we're going from 2 different quotes and outline what all those expenses are going to be in detail. How much money are you asking for? What will it purchase? Is there any other money involved from anybody else? That's an important question that you got to answer. So
That one always gets me, to be honest with you, because it'll say, oh, have you asked like banks specifically? right?
Mhm.
Are there any other credit unions being part of it? I don't know, they haven't asked me that, or they haven't answered me.
Yeah,
right? But so I don't want to assume just because I've applied at all the credit unions. Do you know what I mean? So I always say no, because I don't have anything solid, not a solid answer back yet,
mhm,
but yet it would be a lie once I get, if I got something, right?
right.
I never know really
Right.
how to answer that properly.
I don't know if I would apply to all of them. I would choose a different bank instead.
Yeah, but it will say like, have you, or it might even say, are there other stakeholders that are financially, you know,
Yes.
to this project as well?
Yes,
Well, I
yes.
might have applied to, you know, 3 other people, but they haven't got back to me. So
Right,
if
right.
we answered no, because that is truthful, I haven't got anything yet.
I guess, yeah, I guess that would be a good
but
way to answer
potentially I
that one.
Could get something.
You potentially could, and then you'd have to choose one or the other, right? And let them know as quickly as possible, should you ever get
Yeah,
2.
You could say like at the time of this application.
right.
Yeah,
I also had a friend who approve grants for the city of Halifax. And he told me that if you have like partnership buy-in, so if you're partnering with FRN or FDSS or CALS or whatever, you can put that in there, and that's like eye-catching for them because it shows that there's direct interest and partnership with the program that you're proposing already. And like if you have money in your budget that you're putting towards it, so you can say like,
Right.
this is in our budget, or if somebody's doing work for you, it can be like an in-kind contribution. Too.
yes. Yeah, you can use your own contributions if you're putting any in your budget. Reflect that in your budget. And then you can also reflect any in kind, like if somebody was donating the dirt work for you, or you needed something leveled, or whatever it
Deliver
may
for
be.
your raised garden bed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Some applications, not all, will allow you to designate like a supervisor who's gonna oversee that project. And you can do an in-kind for that person sometimes. But usually that's in their guidelines. That's what, again, why it's so important to read the guidelines thoroughly.
Can you apply for grants or work for a program that has already run? Like post date, almost.
No, not usually.
It'll say work cannot be performed before. money
Before
given.
or whatever, you can't start your project until the money is received, kind of thing. Well, not necessarily approval.
Approved, yeah.
Approval. Once you get approval, you can start. Right? And usually they want to know a start date from you. Right? So you can't really start without approval. And you want to make sure that that you don't start before anything, before approval.
And not to catch 22, because we had applied for that commencement, whatever, Canada grant, commemorative, whatever. And you can't start the work until you're approval. Never got approved until like 2 weeks before the event was supposed to happen.
Yeah. Was that a
And so I had
federal?
to give the money back.
Was that a federal
Yeah.
government? Yeah.
And I said, well, would you give an extension? Because there's no way now that I can make this event happen in 2 weeks, but I could do it in 8 months, like when, whatever. She said, no, we would give you 4 months. Like, well, we can't do a Heritage Days in the middle of winter,
Yeah,
like to have all this, what we had planned, right?
right.
So yeah, I ended up doing.
Some of them have a really short time
Yeah.
frame, and that's why I said it's so important to read your guidelines, because sometimes when you think, oh, this sounds so good, but when you actually look at it, you think there's no way I can make this work.
Yeah. And she said, well, why hadn't you started and got it ready? Because I needed to have this money in order to get to start.
Yes,
And now I can't book any entertainment. I can't book, right? Like,
yeah,
So rude, that's rude.
yeah, those
Well, let me
ones
get my
those
other
ones are
money.
really tough. I think events would be the toughest to do,
Funny, I forgot about it.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
you either gotta kind of cover it all up front, hope for the best. Or
Okay, yep, we're doing great for time. So, how much you, sorry, not how much money, but any other involved, any other money involved or partners. So if you have some partners, that doesn't necessarily have to mean they're giving you money. It can be partners that they like to see partnerships, right? So that could be a share of the workload, that could be anything in kind, anything in kind. And who is involved in running, overseeing the details of the project? They usually want a name for that person as well. And a well thought out detailed budget reinforces credibility. Now, there is some ones where you can ask for an extension. You can't control the work that's being done. When you're looking at tradespeople, something didn't come in that was supposed to come in, like, you know, so you can ask for an extension. You would just have to probably fill out a report for them and let them know why you're asking for that extension. So does anybody have any questions about the budget? What would we want to include in our budget? Like, what do you think you have to do for detail? If you were. And you want to make sure that they'll either cover some staff, or it's got to be in kind. Up to a certain amount might be covered, but then that's it, right? Or it has to be totally in kind. So you want to make sure you know that detail. And then they will allow you to list certain, say you found somebody, you were doing that community garden and somebody was going to donate all that dirt. You could put that in your grant.
They often won't pay for like wages or operational things, but can you put like, sometimes it's successful putting an administration fee in and to cover a portion of it.
Yeah,
Have
sometimes
been
you,
successful in that, or have you tried that?
I have not tried that one, no, no. And if it's a matching grant, then make sure you've got the funds put aside to pay for that, right? And sometimes you'll find out that then things come in a little bit cheaper and they don't ever want you to give that back. They don't want to get their grant back. So they want to know that you've spent it. So if anything, go a little bit on the higher side with something, right? So that you make sure that grant is gone. They don't want it, it's a whole lot of paperwork for them. And they don't want it back.
If grant requirements don't specifically say we will not pay the wages, would you put wages in there? Would you put your time or your assistant's time or?
If they say that they won't pay for wages, then I wouldn't put it in.
Right. But
Because
if-
that might mean the difference between getting approval and not getting approval.
Mhm.
I would try and figure out a way to get it in another way. You know? Like I said, maybe that there's some in-kind stuff that you can do. And you can put that down.
Okay.
I don't think I would ever list it as wages, but I would list it as other in-kind stuff. Like the dirt is in-kind, or volunteers, you could list volunteers supervising the work or something like that, right? So you could list some in-kind stuff that would take place. I don't think I've ever really listed wages, but if they allow me to, I do.
Right, okay. Okay,
If they allow me to, I do. For sure. And then if you send in your audited financial statement, I find it very helpful if you have a GIC, if you have a, not necessarily a savings account, but if you just have money sitting in your bank account, it's going to be reflected in your audited financial statement. So put a little note to that, and try and allocate some of those funds to bring it down a little bit. Make a plan that you've got this set aside for X number of dollars for something, right?
In that particular project?
Either in the project as an extra, or you could, or it doesn't even have to be project related. It's set aside. That's our computer replacement fund.
So they know that you're not flush to say, oh, you've already got money, why are you asking for this grant?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So you would say that's our computer, that's our emergency fund, like whatever you want to list it as. But it's a good idea to account for those funds.
Right.
If you can.
That's a good idea. I never thought of that.
Would that be like an addendum in your audit that you add as an explainer?
An extra note along with it somewhere along the line. Sometimes they'll allow you things at the bottom, or you could, I even put it on my budget because I couldn't find anywhere else to put it. So I put it on the budget when I'm making out the budget, because they don't, most grants don't have a specific form. They want you to develop the budget, and they're giving you like a little page, and you're gonna list everything on your budget. So I just put a little asterisk or whatever I can get the computer to do for me and put, please note, when you read our financial statement, you will see that we are sitting with X number of dollars in a GIC, which has been set aside as our emergency fund, or
building fund or computer.
building
replacement
fund or whatever, computer replacement or something. Yeah. And that just generates back to that statement of need. That just helps support that statement of need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then we're at almost the last one here. After you receive your grant. So now this is important, really important. You need to shake a few hands. You need to put it in the paper. You need to put it on your website. You need to thank them. Be sure you will get an agreement letter. Not necessarily with the banks and some of those organizations, but definitely any government type of grant, or Horizon one, which is seniors specific. You will get an approval letter and agreement. So read that carefully. And you'll be expected to sign off on that. Make note of any deadline dates for reports, final reporting. And good accounting and final reporting can have an impact on future applications. So if you're applying for an Alberta government one, or you're applying for one that you could reapply for with a different project or something, good accounting and final reporting go a long way to impact your future applications. Thank you letter. I said, fix the paper, personal thank you to works. Ask a local representative for a photo op. Your MLA, ask your MLA for a photo op. In fact, if you qualified for any time of government grant, quite often he brings you the check. So that's your chance for a photo op right there. And this year is an election year. So they're gonna want those photo ops. So if you need anything this year, get on it. The next deadline, I think, for CFEP and SIP is May the 15th. And then I think the next one after that is September 15th, I think. But you can go on their website. And those are easy to find. Oh, there's one more slide after this.
Sorry, I was writing notes.
This is what we put on the front of our door. When we got our lighting grant. And actually, it was the Friends of the Library. I did the application, but it was the Friends of the Library that actually applied for the grant. So that's a good one to do if you can put a few posters, even if you put them around town or on your door, for sure. Some people put an actual sign outside. So if it's, you know, a big enough, like if you were doing a community garden, you could put a sign up saying thanks to whoever. Right? And it's important to make the thank yous and shake the hands and get them in for a photo op. I had ATB with all those books come. And we set up one of our big chairs, our big company chairs, and we had 3 staff members. And then we just totally surrounded them with books. Like we just, like, you know, they probably had books up to here all around the chair where they were. And then I had Vicky take a photo. So, yeah. So they like that kind of stuff. That goes a long way. Yeah. And they can put that on their website. Yeah. You know. And it goes, if you want to apply again to them, then it also really helps with the banks if you go in and talk to the manager. Because most managers do have a say when it comes to their community if somebody's applied. And they really like to know that you're going to be applying. So go in and introduce yourself, let them know, because you can apply online. But if you let that manager know, then I think they might call them when they're looking at your grant application.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And in conclusion, grants should reflect planning, research, and vision, the importance of the project in your community, and clearly state need and submit required documents. I already said this earlier, but watch, there may be a word count on each question. Develop a relationship. If you are successful, a thank you letter is a must. Signage, photo op, and then evaluate the outcome. Questionnaires, even online, you can put a few questions up online. And how you gathered that data. They'll want to know how you gathered that data. Anybody have any questions? More feedback? You're more than welcome to email me if you think of something later. Yeah, if you have any questions that you think of after, or you're just not sure about something, you know, for sure, let me know. There is lots of grants out there. It does take a little bit of time, but it gets easier. The more you do, the easier it gets.